Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra, Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's episode, we have an NWSL year in review for you and an update on everyone in the latest in the league. A quick reminder, if you're joining us live, hit likes, follow, subscribe, comments. All that stuff helps out Attacking Third so much. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and give our videos a thumbs up. YouTube.com/Attacking Third. I'm here. You're here. We sort of made it, Lisa. I don't know. We're still in holiday mode.
We are, and I'm actually, happy to be on holiday mode a little bit, because I know everyone that listens to us are, and they are still on holiday mode joining us live, so thank you if you're jumping on YouTube early this morning with us. We're so happy to have you here. Join the conversation in the chat. We wanna hear from you, what you did over the weekend, how you're preparing for the new year, everything like that, but it's good to be back with you, bud, and chatting because women's soccer doesn't stop, and there's always news, there's always things to chat about. And as we end the year of 2022, looking ahead to 2023, it's so nice to be reflective and look back at everything that was accomplished this year in women's football, in the NWSL, individually in players, at Attacking Third, what we did here and everything that went on, before we kind of flip that page and look ahead to 2023 to say, hey, the draft. Oswald in our chat right now saying they're excited for the draft coming up, as are we. But before we get there, we're gonna look back a little bit, right, and reflect on everything that's happened, because it was a big year for women's football, for the NWSL, and a lot happened. But it's always good to be here with you, Sandra.
We hopped on and we said, let's do this. Let's get ready to do A3. Still stuck in holiday mode. I still got my holly hat on. I might have some holly stuck in my throat. Honestly, I listen, you can't hide that kind of stuff when it's just there. It's there. Coming to you live from
This is
the
a
guest.
podcast.
Yeah, coming to you live from the guest bedroom. Like, it's just, that's how it's got to be when you're in holiday mode still. But I'm excited for this episode. I think you said it best, because even in the days leading up to what can be considered like a holiday break for some folks, we got some chunks of news dropping along the way for NWSL, and we want to talk about those before we sort of get into our year in review. Because before we took a step back to do traveling, to be with families and stuff like that, we had some player news that dropped, and we had some head coaching positions get announced, and we wanted to talk a little bit about those before we get into our year in review. We gotta start with this player. We gotta start talking about Debinha, because that's where we last left everybody, Lisa. We were talking about Debinha and things that we were hearing across the rumor mill and what that could mean for a player of her caliber, what that could mean for NWSL. And after we had that episode, the breakup was made official. North Carolina Courage coming out with an official statement with Debina. She's quoted within this statement as well, a little bit of a farewell, saying it's official that she will not be returning to North Carolina Courage. 6 seasons with the Courage, 7 trophies, has been with the club since 2017, and now everyone awaits both 2023 and the decision for where we're going to see Debinha play next.
Yeah, when this news dropped that she would not be returning to the club, it was definitely very large. Right? This is giant news, but I really don't think it was that surprising, because at this point, the 31-year-old midfielder was a free agent in the league, and we knew that for the last several months. We knew that Debinha was a free agent, and so often some of these big free agents that were out there, if their teams were going to re-sign them, that was made very clear. You think of Christine Sinclair with the Portland Thorns, Canadian international, on the Thorns' return home after winning the NWSL championship. Sinclair announced that she will be staying in Portland as her free agency was available at that point. And for someone like Debina, who was the biggest person on my free agency watch list, I know we had talked about that a lot here on Attacking Third. And the fact that North Carolina hadn't announced she'll be staying and she hadn't said that was a little bit peculiar. So when this announcement came that she would not at all be staying in North Carolina, it was pretty bittersweet, I think, for a lot of Courage fans, because they wanted her to stay. How could you not want her to stay? But then as the rumors started to swirl about Debinha going to Europe and playing with Arsenal, maybe, you have to imagine that so many clubs were reaching out to her, wanting to pick her up and wanting to sign her. So as a player that of her caliber, and at this point in her career, she's been an NWSL championship MVP in 2019. She's been on NWSL best 11 this past season. She went on a tear scoring goals. She's a veteran. She's a leader. She's just such a tremendous player to have. This was not at all surprising, but we're still waiting, right, for that other shoe to drop, so to say, as to where she's going to go, what kind of contract she's going to get. Is she staying in the NWSL? Is she going abroad? These are giant questions that I am just waiting to be answered, but I wasn't surprised she was not staying with North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit of what we chatted about, like what's going to come next for that player that she had already been, when you're looking at sort of the careers of some of these players, some of these like really superstar kind of caliber type of players, and how some of them have been with their clubs for X amount of years, right? And when you're looking at sort of the very long resume of being just an NWSL with the Courage, I said that in the previous episode that I don't think there's anything left for this player to prove, not only with that club specifically. There's I don't know if there's any more challenges for a player like Debinha with North Carolina, and would that possibly mean that she would be open to a different move to another club in NWSL for a different challenge, or in a different league altogether, right? So that was my biggest thing. So sort of, I'm with you in terms of having that news kind of drop officially. It didn't really shock us too much. If anything, it's just like, okay, well, this just means that we definitely have to, remain on Debinha watch for, the next, I don't know, we're doing this post Christmas. We're doing this live on December the 27th. Look, if it is going to be an international move, there's some international windows that aren't going to be open until January 2023. So there might not be the news that drops, ahead of that until it's actually open. So it's something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on for sure. But had to kick off the episode with chatter about that first. But there was also some head coaching news that dropped along the way. Houston Dash also doing everyone a real solid and saying, hey, we're going to let you all know that there's going to be some head coach news coming your way. They put everybody on notice. And then they went ahead and made the announcement that Sam Laity is going to be the official head coach of the Houston Dash. And I got to say, just off the bat, really like this move. Thought it's a good head coaching hire for the Dash. The Laura Harvey coaching tree, the branch grows again by one. It's a big deal and a good pickup, right?
Oh, this is a huge, huge pickup. I love that Houston went out and got a coach like Laity, who has been in the NWSL for over 10 years, right? And also with OL Reign, a club that has seen a lot of success, has also seen a lot of hardship. So this is a coach that's been through a lot and in the NWSL, and that experience is priceless for a coach like this, especially going into a team like Houston Dash that has won their first championship in 2020 with the Challenge Cup as a club. They made their first playoff berth this year in the NWSL. So this is a Houston Dash club that is on the climb. They're taking steps forward, and in order to keep those steps moving forward, you have to hire a coach like Sam, because if you hired someone that wasn't at all in the NWSL before, it's a bit of a learning curve. So at this point, they've already got a step ahead. They've already got a head start on what they can do this year, because as you mentioned it's the Laura Harvey coaching tree. And in coaching, where your branch comes from is so crucial and important. And being under a coach like Laura Harvey has taught someone like Sam Laity so many things. Even after this announcement dropped, of course, Houston giving a big celebratory welcome as the fourth head coach in Houston Dash history. But then OL Reign also putting out something very personal and very sentimental on their social media for a coach like Sam. Whether it was players coming on and saying, hey, you've been here for 10 years and you changed, you made this game better, you made me better as a player. And then Laura Harvey just being so honest and vulnerable in wishing Sam the best of luck moving forward and how much she's going to miss him, but also how great it's going to be to play against him and play against a team like that. This is how the league grows and it continues to evolve. And I'm really excited for Sam. I'm really, really excited for Houston because they lost Juan Carlos Amaros to Gotham. And that was a coach that I was like, hey, this guy could be here for a bit. He could make changes. But now when I look at who they were able to get in Sam Laity, this is going to be really, really big for Houston.
Yeah, I think it says, I mean, look, I think that's what people were looking at immediately. I think in this hire, the reaction from players that he has coached over the years, just out of Seattle, and their reaction to the news of him moving on to an official head coaching position, it was plentiful, right? I think that's what folks were looking at. I think it was a similar reaction to when Gotham did hire somebody like a Scott Parkinson, someone who was also on the sidelines with Laura Harvey for a very, very long time. All of the good energy around those types of hires. And just like really sort of looking at that 2021 season for OL Reign and how they found themselves in a very, very interesting crossroad in terms of the results that they were trying to string together, or lack thereof, right? They weren't getting a lot of wins in that first half of 2021 season. They made a move to get Laura Harvey to return back with the franchise after terminating the CD from his head coaching position, and Sam Laity had to step in until Laura Harvey came back to the States, after Olympic duty with the United States Women's National Team, and you could really see that is when that turnaround in 2020 really happened for OL Reign, and Laura Harvey just kind of came back in and said, "Okay, let's all go together," and they made that push to second place in the league. So you could sort of see that this is a coach that was primed for the next step for years already.
Completely.
Really. So
Yeah.
to sort of see this, finally happen for him, and to sort of also see that coming out of the press conferences and some of the reporting that's been done about it already, that it was time. That it was time for the next step, and the next step was to actually, be a head coach of another team.
Honestly, because he has had so many different roles. I mean, yeah, when Harvey wasn't there, he became interim head coach, but he's also coached under at the international level under Vlad Wananovsky for U.S. Women's National Team. He's been with United Soccer coaches on their staff. So this coach, excuse me, has a lot of experience at a lot of different levels in a lot of different roles. And this was the natural progression for someone like him. I think Houston's really lucky to have him, to see kind of what changes he can make heading into the 2023 season. If he can get this Houston Dash side to return to the playoffs for a second year in a row, make that run, go on a bit of a tear, it'll be a big test, right? A lot of eyeballs on someone like Sam Laity, especially as you enter into that Houston Dash community that is very passionate about their women's football.
We'll see. It's an exciting club to coach. I think you've got, Ebony Salmon, Maria Sanchez, involved in the attack. They just secured that center back duo with, re-signing Prysock, and she's going to be alongside Naughton, holding things down in the back. So we'll see what this next era of Dash football will look like under Sam Laity. But before we get into our year in review, there's another little bit of news that we wanted to chat about that broke prior to the holiday weekend. News of Brazilian legend, not just international, but Marta is re-signed with Orlando Pride, announcing another contract with the Pride for 2 more years. Has been with the Pride since 2017, in the process of coming back from an ACL injury. But this is still, again, another bit of massive news that we got before the holidays. It was like Christmas. Christmas came early.
It
for everybody.
was. It was
Who's
like
staying in NWSL? Marta.
It was like a little Christmas gift, that not only in the NWSL, but with Orlando Pride, a club that, she has been the leader of and been a veteran of, and after tearing her ACL, right, like the second, third game of Challenge Cup, I don't even remember. It was so early on in Challenge Cup, the second game, um, and being out for the rest of Challenge Cup, the rest of the regular season, the only like positive thing was like, okay, she'll be back for the World Cup. She'll be back for next season,
Yeah.
because of how early it was. But so fans didn't even get to watch her last year. I mean, like 120 minutes is not enough time to watch the legend play, especially in Orlando. So she'll be back, especially a 2-year deal for this 36-year-old international. She is the legend. And this is her year, right? For Brazil to go to the World Cup, for her to make big waves in Orlando, in the NWSL, re-signing with the club, staying at home. I mean, this is huge. This was a big announcement. It was like almost as big as Debina not staying in North Carolina, right? Because it was like back-to-back news breaking of these huge players, both Brazilian internationals, about what they were going to do in the NWSL. And I know Orlando Pride fans were just ecstatic to know that Marta would be staying. I mean, that's a huge positive for the club.
I think it was a little bit like maybe like a flip, like in terms of perspective on like two players who, yes, play as teammates for the same national team with Brazil, but who are like sort of in different phases of their
Right.
career, right? So I think there's that common thread of neither player has a ton to prove, but in different, like maybe different areas, right? These are two players who are obviously still chasing things like a World Cup title or international titles like that, right? Winning Copa Americas, already they sort of won certain things even as international teammates, but there's things in NWSL that Marta is probably still trying to chase that maybe Debinha doesn't need to chase anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and just like I said, in different phases. So you've got a Debinha who is 30, looking to maybe try to get some different recognition, and unfortunately, it's pretty glaringly obvious that for a lot of players who are maybe chasing global um, accolades are finding that they need to play in Europe in order
Mhm.
to achieve those things. I know folks, it's the end of the year, so you're starting to see a lot of end of the year lists come out, and folks are feeling, are seeing the CONCACAF disrespect
Yeah.
or the CONMEBOL disrespect on players that aren't very high on lists who play in these specific regions. Um, and you do have to wonder a little bit if a player like Debinha does go overseas, if she starts to get some of that respect or recognition that she should already have because of the amount of success that she has had with NWSL and Brazil, right? Coming off of a Copa America Femenina title, at this point, just in this past year
Mhm.
alone. So I am curious to sort of see what the return of Marta looks like in 2023 for Orlando Pride, because I thought she also served a very unique purpose for the Pride and for NWSL. I mean, we're talking about, when you're talking about Marta, you're talking about probably the greatest women's soccer player to have ever
Oh, yeah.
graced the pitch. And not only that, you're talking about a player who has had a hand, a role, a boot, a cleat in, sort of helping raise and elevate the profiles of certain leagues across the world as well. And I think with Orlando able to get Marta to NWSL,
Yep.
it was another opportunity for this player to sort of elevate just not only that club's profile but the league's profile as well. And that 2017 that she had with Orlando was, you saw immediately what the impact of that player can do, even though she's been in a different phase of her career for the last few seasons already. But that was the first and last time we ever saw the Pride in
Mhm.
the NWSL postseason.
Right.
And she kind of had one of those breakout MVP caliber seasons. So I'm eager to see what
Mhm.
Seb Hines, this current group of Orlando Pride, what they look like with Marta healthy and available.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think the way you said it, that there are probably still some things on Marta's bucket list that she wants to check off as to
Yeah.
kind of what she can do with Orlando, taking them back to the playoffs, probably lifting an NWSL championship, and with a 2-year signing, I think that gives a little bit of light to Orlando fans to know that it's not just 2023, but it is 2024, and this is a 2-year stint where this team can really turn themselves around and have a bit of consistency on the pitch, string together a number of wins throughout the entirety of a season, keep Seb Hines as their head coach the entirety of the season. There are a lot of holes maybe in what Orlando was trying to do, but keeping Marta, keeping her in purple in a pride kit, remaining there. She leads the club in goals, that she has 27. This is a player that, if the club wants to turn things around, wants to win a championship, wants to get back to the playoffs, this is a player in Marta that will do that for them.
100%. We're looking forward to it. Just a little bit of news, just tiny bits of news that dropped before the holiday. Wanted to chat about that with you, Lisa, and with everyone joining us as always. But that's not all we're going to do today on this episode. We're going to do an NWSL year in review for everybody. So stick around. We'll be back right after a quick break.
I've never lost a wingman.
You're lucky. Fly long enough, it'll happen. It's been an honor flying with you.
Top Gun Maverick, rated PG-13, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, let's chat about it. Let's chat NWSL 2022. Big year. Big year for the league. It's kind of hard to wrap my head around the fact that we have to look back and try to chat about a 2022 that really held so much within it, both on and off the pitch. And I think that's really, when we're looking at the NWSL in 2022, that's kind of where we have to start, because the way this NWSL season rang in was with history. And we're talking about the first ever CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, that was struck at midnight, late hours just before players were officially set to, go ahead and register for preseason or get things kicked off. It was a little nerve-wracking. I remember sort of you and I saying, like, okay, so how are we going to content plan? Which way should we sort of, kind of target this? But then all of a sudden, it rang in. We saw the news drop. We saw the tweets drop. We saw the Players Association, on January 31st saying, hey, it's official. It's going to happen. Tonight, we're ratifying a historic first CBA that they just still had to go ahead and iron out some things, but that it was coming. Mm-hmm. And these negotiations that took course over really months, almost a year-long type of negotiations. And I remember when this dropped, Lisa, all of the things that we were looking at within this CBA and how exciting it was. Mm-hmm. To look through all of the wins that this NWSL Players Association was able to point out and say, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win.
Oh, completely. I mean, even as you mentioned, like getting this signed before preseason, to me, that was a win for this league and for the CBA as they entered its 10th year, because 2022 is the 10th year of the NWSL, and to kick it off with a CBA that was the first of its kind, right? Raising the bar in terms of women's rights and CBA in women's sports that was about to happen. And that's exactly what it did, right? It changed the salaries, the minimum salaries for these players and what they were earning, because it was pennies. They were being scraping by before. And we heard from so many players that had been playing in all 10 years of this league, saying that the first year to even this 10th year were dramatically different, but the signing of the CBA meant everything to them, meant everything to these players for the future of the league, for the sustainability of women's professional soccer in the United States, just guaranteeing contracts and severance payments and health benefits and parental benefits and childcare programs, free agency. We've been talking so much about free agency. That would not have been possible without the signing of the CBA. It's crazy to think about that it was about a year ago, right? The end of January, that it was like, hey, this is actually going to happen. And now here we are at the end of December, 11 months later, realizing that how much of a difference it made, what these players were able to have rights to, right? Even like anti-discrimination, anti-harassment policies being put into place, some things that seem like they should have been there since year one, since day one, since moment one of this league, that weren't there. And now there's also so many other things that are put into this that the players are so happy for, and that the players deserve.
I mean, a minimum salary, a minimum salary of 35,000, for players who will now come into the league. That was huge for the longest time. And even when you look back at those very early days, those year ones, those year twos of the league, and just how abysmal a minimum salary was. You're talking $6,000, $7,000. It's tragic to think about. But I mean, things like housing, transportation that were involved in this collective bargaining, 401, the concept of a 401k, that's not a concept anymore. That's a thing that exists for these players. The things like parental leave, like you said, how do you have a women's professional league and not have something like a parental leave structure in place, whether that's for birth or adoption? How many amazing parents exist in these leagues who are went the route of adoption to grow their family? So things like mental health leave. There were all of these massive wins, and I think that was one of my favorite parts. In 2022, it wasn't just the fact that the CBA got signed and got ratified and signed into effect, but the fact that we were also able to celebrate that alongside so many players. I mean, we were doing team previews, and anytime we were talking to a player about their team going into preseason or getting an update on their preseason, we were celebrating the CBA. We were like, hey, let's talk about the CBA. What stands out for you? What were you most excited about? And it was cool to sort of get the reactions of players who have been here for a really long time and players who are sort of on, the up and coming, and sort of their perspective and saying that, this isn't something that I have to fight for, because the players who came before me really laid that groundwork. So it was incredibly, incredibly special time. Historic is almost, at this point, a year later, seems like almost too insignificant or small of a word to really talk about its impact. And I mean, we're already in another historic phase of that, in which we're covering a free agency period, right? Something else that got included in that CBA as well. So I don't know if we'll ever stop celebrating that. But it's nice to talk about it in a year in review.
We'll stop celebrating it when the next one is signed in 5 years, and these players continue to get more bonuses, more money, more rights, more protection. But the overall jubilee will never end.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, having the CBA get passed, I think was also very exciting, because 2022 was already setting itself up to be kind of an iconic year, because it was also an expansion year for the league. They welcomed not just one, but two expansion teams into the league. We saw the arrival or the return of California to women's professional soccer in this country. San Diego Wave FC, Angel City FC entered the fray for NWSL and really did so. Really, really, really did so in a big, big way. We're talking about two teams that made their entry and left their impact immediately in this league.
Totally. I mean, attendance records were broken. It was the adding of these two teams, both of them in California, raised some questions. I mean, people didn't know what was going to happen. That's players didn't know, fans didn't know, media covering it. You and I, we weren't sure how this was going to work, because when you look at some of the attendance of other clubs across the NWSL, they're hitting a couple thousand every single game. So the fact that there could be two expansion clubs in, it's growing the league from 10 teams to 12 teams, both of them in Southern California, and for them to just smash it out of the water. And that's just in terms of like on paper and what these clubs are able to do. Then when we look at the pitch and what they were able to do on the field, Angel City finishing middle of the pack at the end of the year in 8th place, 29 points in the 2022 season. And San Diego Wave, Casey Stoney's team, ends up finishing 3rd in the regular season. They make a playoff run. They host a playoff game because they're number 3rd seed heading into the playoffs. This was just, it was like record breaking after record breaking after record breaking. It was so fun to watch these clubs, to see the players that they signed. That was such an exciting part of last year, going through the expansion draft with these two clubs, the NWSL college draft, to see Alex Morgan, a player going home to San Diego where her family is, and to raise her daughter there, to be happy playing where she wants to play in Southern California. Kristen Press going home to Angel City, Allie Riley playing with Angel City. The everything that surrounded Angel City and San Diego this past year and adding these expansion clubs is just layers upon layers of positive things that happened for the league, for women's soccer, and for these players.
I'm thinking back to when we're doing this year in review, but I'm also thinking back to when we did like way too early predictions. And we were like, historically, like expansion teams need an adjustment period. We were talking about a 2021 off season where Houston Dash was still chasing their first ever postseason appearance. It's tough. It's a tough league to try to make a postseason, and what was that going to look like for these two expansion sides? And Angel City staying in it all the way to the very end, and San Diego never falling any lower than 3rd place on the table. Just very, very impressive all the way through. It set some standards for them. It set the bar pretty high, I think, for both of those clubs respectively. So what they are going to look like in 2023 might be a little different. We'll see if San Diego continues to build and build and build. We'll see if LA breaks through and gets to the postseason on their end. But it was exciting. You mentioned Alex Morgan, and I think we got to stick with that a little bit, because that was also in terms of players and their individual seasons with their respective clubs. I think this is a player that many were wondering, what her season was going to look like. And with Alex Morgan going from Orlando Pride to San Diego, it was probably one of the bigger storylines in 2022, just in the sense of the player that it was. But it was also technically the 3rd NWSL team that she was going to help build from the ground up. We're talking about getting her start with Portland Thorns, a team that had never existed, prior to NWSL, with other women's pro leagues, in the country. Then going to Orlando Pride, an expansion side in 2016, and now San Diego Wave. So it's just like, wow, like Alex Morgan is just really out here at NWSL, like helping to build NWSL franchise profiles across the league. And players who, we've been talking about throughout 2022, unfortunately maybe fitting in certain categories of having to deal with injuries or making returns from different types of injuries in the off season, or mothers sort of making their return to form after going through pregnancy and sort of getting out schedule with being a mom and having their kids sort of connect with them as pro athletes and navigating the waters as a pro athlete navigates those type of schedules. So to sort of see Alex Morgan go through this, and Oswald, shout out to you, hitting it right on the head here. I don't know if anyone could have predicted that 2022 was going to be Alex Morgan's best career year in NWSL.
I never predicted that, just kind of where she was going. And you couple that with the brand new expansion teams that historically have never done very well in a growing league. And the fact that San Diego and Casey Stoney did bring in a player like Morgan who had built 3 teams, who understood that, who had been in the league for 10 years, who had played in other professional leagues, who has the caliber to, and the name, right, to put seats at this, to put fans in the seats at the stadiums. But it's so much more than that, right? It comes down to the training day in and day out, bringing that professionalism to the other players on the team, with rookies that are on this team, right? You look at how many rookies are on San Diego and what a player can do like this. And Sandra, you and I spoke with Alex Morgan early last year, about a year ago, about going to San Diego. It was really early in the season, about kind of how this team was doing, what was developing there, why she wanted to go to San Diego, and what drew her to this club. And she talked about how she was really happy playing for a club like San Diego. And she was finally giving her all because of understanding the international schedule and understanding where the breaks would be and how much more time she would have training with her club team. And at the end of the year, Alex Morgan becomes the 2022 Golden Boot winner. It's like insane. She scored the most goals throughout in the league. 15 goals through 17 appearances for San Diego Wave. This was a player that just turned it on and never turned it off. And there was a moment there where there was a lot of skeptics being like, hey, Alex Morgan, you're only scoring penalty kicks, but a PK is still a goal. It still counts. It still helps your team win the game. That to me doesn't matter at all. But this is a player that took everything that was being thrown at her and turned it all around and did have her best year in the NWSL this year.
I'm just smiling listening to you talk about it, just because it's like we're getting a chance to reflect on the work that we did throughout the year as well. And we talked to Alex Morgan a few times over the course of 2022, but that very, very early one was, I think, kind of set the tone right away, just sort of how she was feeling and what she kind of wanted, like, for herself with San Diego as well. And we joke about, like, not who could have predicted, right? But I'm sure if you, like, ask any of those players in the locker room, they were like, we did. We knew we were gonna we knew we were gonna have a historic season, and we knew we were gonna do this, So that's very, very excited to sort of watch all of that kind of come to life and have that sort of same mindset, no matter what phase of the career those players were in, whether it's somebody like an Alex Morgan, or if it was someone like a Sophia Jakobsen or Naomi Girma or a Taylor Korniak, So very, very cool to see Alex Morgan go on the run that she did, and ahead of a World Cup. That's not it's not a bad timing for one of your biggest players sort of had that kind of club year. But let's also chat a little bit about what team actually got there at the end. We got to chat a little bit about Portland Thorns and their season and their NWSL championship run. This team making it back to the NWSL championship for the first time since 2018, lifting the trophy for the first time since 2017, and earning their 3rd ever NWSL championship title. What a season.
What a season for Portland Thorns. We had to highlight them because this is a club that had a brand new head coach in Ryan Wilkinson, first time in the league, first time with Portland as a coach, after they said goodbye to Mark Parsons, a coach that had left a legacy at this club. And then they go on this incredible run. We saw the return of Crystal Dunn with Portland Thorns. We saw players like Yasmin Ryan stepping up and taking on new roles. Olivia Moultrie with this club being one of the youngest to score and break records there. I mean, it was almost like a storybook season and ending for Portland Thorns throughout the entirety of 2022, because we talk about Alex Morgan and the incredible year she had. You have to look at someone like Sophia Smith in that sense as well, because being on Portland and what she was able to do with Becky Sauerbrunn and Megan Klingenberg and Christine Sinclair up top, overall, this club was just tremendous to watch. And despite some of the hardships that Portland went through off the pitch with their ownership, with their CEOs in the front office, as soon as they crossed the white line and they were playing soccer, it changed for them. They were electric. They were fun to watch. And for them to lift the trophy for the third time, for the first time since 2017, being back in the final, and then just dominating that NWSL championship. We can't forget that. They came out and it was the Sophia Smith show. She just went on a tear and went on a run. Like, it was so fun to watch. We're smiling, talk about Alex Morgan. Now we transition to Portland Thorns, Sophia Smith, and we're just smiling ear to ear. You have to.
There's so many players that we can look back at 2022 and sort of look at and say, like, this player had this type of breakout season, or this player had like this type of comeback season. And I think when you look at Sophia Smith from the beginning of 2022 all the way to its end, every single month you're looking at this player and you're going, there is an MVP caliber storyline that is developing here with Sophia Smith. That I don't think that ever left that player's narrative throughout 2022. And she, closing it out as league MVP, as championship finals MVP, 14 regular season goals, just one short of tying Alex Morgan and having it come down to assists, for the tiebreaker. But 15 goals overall, because scoring that goal in the championship final, hitting the shrug celebration, just like absolute legendary stuff. Like the stuff that we're going to actually look back on again and say that this was just the beginning for Sophia Smith. And I think for me, that was one of the biggest takeaways out of 2022 as well. That it was an incredibly special year for Sophia Smith, both for club and country. But for me, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that it's actually just the beginning.
It is 100% just the beginning for the 22-year-old to have this type of breakout season, dual MVP. And for those that missed it, we did a big, giant U.S. women's national team year in review as well, where we spent a significant portion of that episode talking about a player like Sophia Smith, because for club and for country, she had a breakout year. And at 22 years old, if this is the type of performances and the type of consistency we're getting from Sophia Smith, just imagine what we'll get when has 4 years being a professional, 4 years on the national team, 5 years. In the next 5 years for Sophia Smith, we are going to see this player grow and develop and continue to move that bar higher and higher. And for me, that is so exciting to know that we don't even know the ceiling of a player like Smith. We don't even know her focus, her commitment, her dedication, her professionalism. Her teammates talk about it. The coaches that she has and had in the past all talk about Sophia Smith and her dedication, her professionalism to want to be the best player in the world. And when you see her perform the way she did with Portland, with the United States in 2022, you know that she has a very high ceiling.
Oh, absolutely. She's out there playing with like a level of confidence, that you see from players who are like 10 years older than her, so it's a very exciting time. It was incredibly special to witness, cover, analyze, critique, talk about, with attacking third. And now we're looking ahead to 2023, and we can't wait to see what's next for Sophia Smith. But while she was like continuing to build on her very, very early legacy, she was, delivering some L's, unfortunately, to the opposition. Kansas City Current on the losing end of this NWSL championship final. Let's talk about that a little bit, though. This franchise and their journey to this point, again, another one of those things that I don't think anybody predicted going into the 2022 season. We're talking about a Kansas City side that entered NWSL in 2021 as an expansion side, absorbing a Utah Royals franchise that was undergoing a sale with the previous owner, and entering into NWSL under a temporary crest, a temporary logo, just temporary name. And then 2022, really bringing it on. They unveiled that their KC Current had their official crest. We heard about all these amazing facilities that they were putting together for their players, whether it was the construction of state-of-the-art training facilities, or their soon to arrive NWSL specific soccer stadium that's slated to arrive sometime in 2024. But in the meantime, playing their games at Children's Mercy Park, so making the move from a baseball field to a fully professionalized pitch, and making some off-season moves. We were a little curious how that was going to look, because they kind of rang in their off-season last year, signing Sam Mewis, signing Lynn Williams. We were like, okay, maybe Kansas City might go and do some things here. We predicted them in our early rankings as a top 5 finish.
Top 5, yeah.
And they ended up going all the way to a championship final.
It was such a Cinderella year for Kansas City, because in their first year in 2021, they didn't even have a name. They didn't even have a crest or colors until the final games of the regular season in 2021. And they finished dead last of the league. And like kind of a pitiful dead last, because they weren't able to pick up wins. They did go on a bit of a tear at the end where they were just taking points off of other teams. But the complete turnaround for the 2022 season was exactly what this club needed and what the league needed, because they got a new head coach in Matt Potter. They drafted some incredible rookies, which we will talk about. They had a confidence in the players that they had, whether it's AD Franch in goal, Kristen Hamilton up top, Lola Bonta in the midfield. And then they traded for some incredible players, right? They had players on the pitch, Cece Kaiser up top with Kristen Hamilton. They filled the holes that were absences by Sam Mewis and Lynn Williams getting injured. So for this Kansas City side, they then go on to make it this far in the playoffs by defeating Shield winners OL Reign, and getting 2 goals over them, getting a shutout. This was a team that just had so much belief in themselves that they were really fun to watch. So many people started cheering for Kansas City in 2022 because they just wanted to see them win. They just loved the celebrations from Lola Bonta and the young team, and how they were just going out there having fun, right? Going out, having fun, and to make it all the way to the championship after finishing in dead last the year before speaks to a lot of, I think, what the club is doing off the field in their ownerships, and developing a culture of a winning mentality, and saying that you're professionals. You're going to get your brand new stadium, your own training facility, your own stadium. You're going to have the support of the city behind you, because that city turned teal before the championship in support of these players. And it was just really fun to watch them go all the way to the championship. And of course, a little bittersweet for them to end up losing at the end of it. But it was incredible to watch this Kansas City side this year.
Kansas City, surprising a lot of folks, I think, maybe not us. But I think with the moves that they made last year, they're also continuing to make some moves this year in the offseason. And I'm hopeful that they'll have another successful run in 2023. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. But you know what? We got to close out with the rookies in 2022. I think that was another really, really big storyline in the NWSL 2022 season. We could just rattle off a ton of names, and they're all from different clubs. Sam Coffey, Naomi Girma, Alex Loera, Diana Ordonez, Savannah DeMello, Jalen Howell, Amira Ali, Michaela Clough, Olivia Vanderjagt, Kelsey Turnbull, Caroline, Jill Aguilera, Ava Cook, Sarah Griffin. It just goes on and on and on and on, right? I mean, my goodness, we're talking about like a Red Stars team that fielded 6, 7 rookies at one point. So many different first-year players getting a lot of time. Naomi Girma, my God, going on the run that she did, her performance, earning her rookie and best defender. Just incredible class this year.
This was such an incredible class, and even when you look at some of the players that got drafted, Alex Herrera was a late round draft pick last year and a huge pickup for Kansas City. I think so many questions were asked of this rookie class in 2022 because of it being a landmark year with the CBA, being in the 10th year in the NWSL. A lot of questions were asked of these players to kind of step in and help their team contribute from day one. And so often we don't see that being asked of rookies. They're off the bench players. Of course, you get the superstars that come in and start every game, but this was a draft class that was so incredibly talented, and they contributed on the pitch every single day. I mean, you look at someone like Germa, of course, who was rookie of the year, and she goes on with San Diego under Alex Morgan to do so many great things. But even someone like Michaela Clough at Orlando that got a lot of consistent minutes on a team that faced a lot of injuries, a lot of heartache, a lot of losing their coach early in the season, having to get an intern coach stepping into there. And this is a player that had so many things thrown at them and still continued to perform on the pitch every single day. I loved this rookie class. I really did, because of all the talent we got to see. Remember the run that Savannah DeMello and Jalen Howe went on with Racing Louisville in the middle of the season? They were just getting assists, getting goals for one another. They were combining so well. They looked like they were having so much fun. And I love to see that, especially from rookies that do have a lot of pressure on themselves. I mean, Diana Ordonez, she ends up going on this incredible offensive run for North Carolina, scoring all these goals in back-to-back games, getting braces, and just the records that she continued to break throughout this year. It was one of the best NWSL rookie classes that I think we have seen in a really long time, and that we might see in a while.
100%. Mic drop. I love that. We're going to end there. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on Attacking Third. Download, follow, listen to us anywhere you get your podcast. You can catch us too on YouTube. Subscribe at youtube.com/Attacking Third. Like, follow, subscribe, leave comments. We want to hear from you. For Sandra and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.